All right. Welcome again to another Friday afternoon at the United States Marshals Museum. I'm David Kennedy, curator for the United States Marshals Museum. Just wanted to thank everybody who's going to be showing up and listening in today. First things first, and I'll probably end up doing this a few other times throughout this broadcast today, is I need to apologize to a number of people. Every single time, it seems like every single time I bring up Ole Miss and I make the mistake of actually referring to the name of the university, I, for some reason, keep saying Mississippi State University, not University of Mississippi. And every single time that comes up, I keep telling myself, okay, I screwed it up last time. I'm going to say it the right way this time. Then I always say it wrong again. So I need to just say Ole Miss and just leave it at that. But we are talking about University of Mississippi today, not Mississippi State University. Before I get into the main subject matter I want to talk about, though, I want to give you a heads up. We've had a busy couple of weeks at the Marshals Museum, and we're about ready to have even more stuff going on at the United States Marshals Museum. And with that, we've been joking internally that we're going to have to start doing in addition to this, we're going to have to start doing a weekly news program about what the Marshals Museum is doing. Just because we've got so many things going on. A lot of people, well, typically we do have a lot of things going on. It's one of those things I always like to talk about as being almost like being a duck on a pond, is just like really cool, calm water, ducks sitting there just nicely, calmly going along, but underneath the water, their feet are going about 100 miles an hour. That's how most museums are. There's lots of stuff going on that nobody ever sees. And it makes it even more painful around here knowing that the museum is not fully open yet, and we are still doing a lot of activities, not just this. We are doing a lot of other public outreach programs. We're taking active roles in what's going on in the school districts, not just here in Fort Smith, but elsewhere. And we are doing what we can to help tell these stories and to get the word spread. So just to go through my notes for stuff to talk about this week, Constitution Week is coming up. That's the annual celebration of the signing of the United States, or the ratification of the United States Constitution. That's in September every year. And Constitution Week is 14th to the 18th of September this year. And for this year, normally here in Fort Smith, we go out individually to all of the classrooms in a particular grade level, second grade, fourth grade. We'll pick a different year each year. And we go out and we have readers, everything from the mayor of Fort Smith. Occasionally we'll have one of our state legislators. We'll have staff from here at the museum, board members from here at the museum, people, business leaders, and community members from around the area. Go to Fort Smith, Barling, Arkansas, Van Buren, Arkansas. We'll go out to the schools and we'll read a particular book on the subject of American history, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, different subject matters along those lines. And we'll read those, and then we'll give each of the school kids, we'll get a copy of a pocket Constitution quite often, or like a bookmark or something similar that talks about that particular subject. And so this year, seeing as how we're dealing with COVID-19 and trying to make sure that everybody stays safe, the last thing we want to do is send anybody into any of these schools if they might be immunocompromised. We don't want to expose anybody to something they shouldn't be. So this year we are doing it online. There's going to be 5 different live readings that we are doing on YouTube. And there are, right now, we have some very special people. Leona Tate. Leona Tate is, she was one of the McDonough Three. We had them here a couple years ago for the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade. She was one of 3 schoolgirls who were escorted by Deputy U.S. Marshals into McDonough 19 Elementary School in New Orleans. A lot of people are familiar with the story of Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges, she went by herself to a school. There were supposed to be other kids went with her, but their parents backed out. So Ruby went by herself to one school. There's 3 other girls who went to McDonough 19, and Leona Tate, founder of the Leona Tate Foundation for Change, she'll be one of our readers. She's going to be doing that one day. The director of the United States Marshals Service, Donald Washington, is going to be reading a book for us. We have Catherine Gray. She's the History and Preservation Officer for the Cherokee Nation. Former board member here, former National Park Service employee. She is going to be reading a book. We also have two very special celebrity guests who are coming in. We cannot say who they are yet. We're going to be mentioning them as soon as we can. For these, you're going to have to register through through Leslie, our educator. We're going to be sharing those links on Facebook more and more often over the next couple of days. But lhiggins@usmmuseum.org, and you can register to see that. Those are going to be by invitation, or like by register. You have to register to be able to see those. If you know someone who's a school teacher, if you know somebody who's interested in the subject, you might want to have them do that. We can only play these the one time, and in many of these cases, we can't even keep the copies of the videos by agreements with the publishers. So that's going to be the 14th through the 18th. On YouTube. Those are all aimed at lower or upper elementary school. Right now we have, again, because of the nature of COVID-19, instead of doing an exhibit inside the building, we have a window exhibit, our window front exhibit. If you're here in the Fort Smith area, come by, park in the front lot, come up to where our store is in the very front of the building, and you can look in the window and see an exhibit. It's a poster exhibit celebrating the centennial of the 19th Amendment. I talked about women's suffrage last week. If you haven't seen that one, go back and catch that one. That was a lot of fun, talking about the women's suffrage movement, talking about the Marshals' involvement with that enforcement of voting laws. The title of it is Votes for Women, a Portrait of Persistence, organized by the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibit Service in collaboration with the National Portrait Gallery. There's some really good information on that. It's really a fun, small exhibit to take a look at. And I hope if you're here in the area, we get a lot of people just driving through the lot, but they just drive through the lot. Go ahead, pull up, stop in front of the building, take a look in the window. And you never know, if I'm out in the area, I might be able to come out and say, hey. Let's see also. Big announcement we made this last week. We have received in April, there was a donation of $500,000 for a match. And we are this close to achieving our match of the $500,000. And so we are moving forwards with that. That will, once we get that other, to finish up that back half of that match, then that'll be the first $1 million of the 8 towards our initial goal to start building our museum experience. And as much as we can't, as much as I know there's a lot of people who want to see the museum fully up, you can't believe how much we want to see that too. We cannot wait to share these stories with you. So we are that much closer to pushing go on the experience. Also coming up, National History Day. It's an event for mostly high school kids. It goes on across the country. Arkansas has been pretty active. The Fort Smith area has been getting much more active over the last few years. I'm going to give a nod to Leslie Higgins, our Director of Education, who has helped to make sure that that happens. She's on the state board for it, and she is doing what she can to help people learn how to do this a little bit better. And I know it's a little bit harder to do this year, again, with COVID going on. If you know a teacher who's interested in working on National History Day, especially if they're in Arkansas, she is going to be doing 1-hour workshops on Tuesdays beginning next Tuesday on the 8th. And so workshops are going to be on Zoom. Registration is required. We're going to be sharing this. We already shared information on this a couple of days ago on Facebook. We're going to continue, and Instagram and Twitter. We're going to share this more often upcoming. Also, if you are students and teachers, if you have a kid who's interested in doing National History Day, have them come on as well, because that's going to be happening on Thursdays. So teachers specifically are going to be 1-hour workshops on Tuesdays. Students and teachers, 30-minute sessions, on Thursdays. And again, registration is required. You can email Leslie about that. We also, if you haven't gone on to catch our YouTube channel, we've been very busy on YouTube. We just dropped over a couple of weeks ago, we dropped a week-long virtual summer camp with different activities each day. And so if you have a kid who's interested in doing some different things, or if you're just wanted to have some activities to do with your younger child or with grandchildren, take a look at our YouTube, the summer camp. There's a whole playlist of those videos that are on there, and we've done some different things along those lines. And then lastly, as I mentioned every week, we have our buy a brick campaign. You can go right to our webpage and you can buy a brick on the webpage that we have. And so, as I've mentioned, we have the first round of bricks. Those are already were put in. Those have actually been delivered. We're looking right now very shortly. And again, I can't give you a timeline on this as much as I want to, because I know Mrs. Clough is probably going to pop in because she ordered bricks for her husband. We are going to get those put into the ground. As soon as we do, we are going to be sharing the pictures all over the place, and cannot wait till that happens. And just really quickly, before I get into my subject for today, I see Sharon, regular from Tennessee, came in and said hello. John Peterson, retired federal court employee, huge thank you to the U.S. Marshals Service. A lot of people do not realize how important the Marshals Service are to federal court employees. And John, thank you for your service in the courts. It takes everybody to help make sure our justice system continues to operate. And it's no small part to everybody. So what I am going to talk about today is the Ole Miss Riot of 1962, also referred to sometimes as the Battle of Oxford. And again, as I said at the very beginning of this, and I'm probably going to do it towards the end as well, I need to apologize greatly because the first couple of things that came out from the museum yesterday talking about what we were going to talk about today, I ended up making the comment, or I wrote it up wrong, because every single time I mean to do this, I always do it wrong. I call out Mississippi State University instead of the University of Mississippi. Ole Miss is University of Mississippi. And I always, for one reason or another, I get it wrong. And then I say, okay, once I'm reminded, I'm going to get it right next time. And the next time I go, okay, no, wait a minute, it's the other one. And I get it wrong again. So I'm going to have this in a sign up on my wall, University of Mississippi. And so that way I don't forget it. But this was called out by a couple of retired deputies yesterday, online, as well as an email and a phone call that we got from a very good friend of the museum. And so we are, I could not be more apologetic about this, especially the Herschel Garner. Herschel, I actually talked about him a couple of weeks ago when I was showing one of my favorite documents that we have is the cease and desist order, restraining order that he had in his pocket when he walked up the stairs in New Orleans when he helped as a deputy to integrate those schools. Herschel was a longtime deputy assigned to the Eastern District of Arkansas, based out of Little Rock, still lives in Arkansas. And Herschel was at New Orleans. He was at Ole Miss. One of these days I need to sit down and talk to him about some of his other jobs that he's done. But he's one of a very small number of deputies who are still alive from these events. I know others, one of them I'll be talking about here in a bit, Al Butler. He was one of the deputies in charge that evening during the Battle of Oxford. Al was also at Ole Miss and then later on at the Pentagon riots. And really, it was people like Al and people like Herschel who really kind of helped push the Marshals Service towards the future that they went into in the 70s and the 80s. So with that, just for those of you who aren't familiar, this is a thing that happened in 1962 as a result of the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954. Segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. And so obviously this led to a lot of integration of elementary, middle school, high school across the country, a lot of public school systems. It also applied to a lot of the state universities as well. And so James Meredith, a Black American Air Force veteran, he was already partway through college, and he applied to University of Mississippi. They did not let him come in, and it was entirely under racist grounds. Governor Ross Barnett, there is no case in history where the Caucasian race has survived social integration. we will not drink from the cup of genocide, and so on and so forth. And so based in that, because he would not take any movement towards this, the university would not take movement, others in the area, the state was not willing to take those steps to enforce this Supreme Court decision. So President Kennedy and President Kennedy talked to him, and Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, they didn't want to bring federal troops in, and they were hoping that through legal means they were going to be able to pull this off. And so as a result of everything that ended up happening, Kennedy ended up deciding to send, Robert Kennedy ordered 127 United States Marshals, 316 deputized U.S. Border Patrol agents, and 97 federalized Federal Bureau of Prisons officers to go with Meredith during the arrival and during the registration. And so the way that this all happened is they were kind of set up at a camp well outside of Oxford with the plan to take military trucks to go in, and then just because they wanted to make it a surprise, because they knew that there were people who were watching what was going on at the camp, they threw them all onto planes as if it was like, we're going to practice this just in case we have to do this. And they get everybody in full gear on planes, and they flew them over to Oxford. Many of the people who were flying over had no expectation that was going to happen, but they fly over into near Oxford. They get into trucks. They drive onto the campus, and they start to set up their defense around the Lyceum and around other parts of the campus. They have James Meredith was moved into a dorm room, and as the news started to get out about this, more and more people who are opposed to this activity started to show up. And when they started to show up, the crowd got bigger and bigger, and eventually, by the time the whole evening was over, there were about 3,000 people. They started to get more and more violent. They started to throw rocks and bricks. They also began to shoot at people. By the time that the evening was done, out of those 120, I don't have numbers on the Border Patrol or the Bureau of Prison officers, but for the deputies, there were 127 deputies. 79 of them were injured, 7 by gunshot wounds. One of those I'll talk about here in a bit. We mentioned him once as a trivia question a couple months ago, but Gene Same, Graham Eugene Same, he was badly injured that evening. He ended up, by some accounts, dying 3 times on the way to the hospital. Ended up continuing on his service as Deputy U.S. Marshal. Very highly respected. I want to be showing some materials from his file that we have here in a little bit. But over the course of things, I'm going to go ahead and just start showing you stuff. One of the reasons why, even though this is not the anniversary or anywhere near the anniversary of the Ole Miss Riots, that was the night of September 30th going into October of 1962. Let me make sure I've got there we go. I think I'm probably missing some comments here. There we are. All right, I see Sharon's comments that she grew up in Oxford. Milwaukee Police Historical Society, I'm glad to see you guys are here. And let's see, let me get back over to my screen. And so let's see here. Even though that this isn't the anniversary, that's in another few weeks, I wanted to talk about this now because I've shown everybody this gas gun before. This particular gas gun, 37 millimeter, it's model 201-Z from Federal Labs in Salisbury, Pennsylvania. This particular tear gas gun we already had here in the collection on loan to us from the Marshals Service, and this particular tear gas gun was used at Ole Miss. And the reason why I'm kind of excited is because we now have 2 of them. This one just showed up this week. This was over in the collection, my understanding, at the Eastern District of Arkansas, and they went ahead and they hand delivered it here just this last week. The chief deputy, one of the supervisors from over there, brought this over. So even with the old, you can tell that they're not museum people because they've got this red Dymo label sitting there on the barrel. But it's the exact same thing, 201Z, and Federal Labs, Salisbury, Pennsylvania. I need to go through this and clean it off a little bit because I can see some fingerprints right there in the metal. But 37 millimeter, these things were used all night long by the deputies as they were holding off that crowd. Our understanding of it is that during the course of the evening, the deputy marshals, they ran out of tear gas 3 different times, and as they used the tear gas to keep the crowds pushed back, the tear gas, they had to get delivered from off-site and would get brought in, and they would get handed around. The course of the evening, they stood, and there's pictures, and if you Google on, if you search on YouTube and elsewhere, you can see lots of news footage from that time frame of them being able to, of the deputies on the, out there on the steps in front of the Lyceum doing that defense. And you'll see photographs of Jim McShane, who was the chief U.S. Marshal at the time, escorting James Meredith to class. And a lot of people don't realize that this was not just that one night. The deputies were on the campus for the entire school year, and they were escorting him the whole way through. And while they were on campus, they were white deputies. On weekends, when James Meredith would go home to visit his family, because he had a wife and kids at the time, to go home, that would not be white deputies with him. There were black deputies who were with him during those trips when he was off campus. And there are a number of stories that we've gotten from different people. One of them is that some of the black deputies were arrested because there were law enforcement officers in the South who did not believe that the federal government would deputize a black man. So we get to deal a little bit with that. I mentioned Al Butler, and I've shown you this before, and this is on our webpage. This was the helmet Al Butler wore on the steps at the Lyceum. And so you can see this black stripe here. I've talked before about how that black stripe denoted that he was in a leadership position, simply so that would identify him from someone who was wearing one of these. This is another helmet that we have that was also there that same night. I think at some point, I don't know, at some point later on, they clear-coated Al's helmet. This one's just got the plain paint and the stencil on there. And this one, this particular helmet was worn by Robert Powell, Eastern Arkansas. Bob Powell, he was also assigned to Eastern Arkansas, and he wore this helmet at Ole Miss. And one of the crazy things on this is right here on the helmet, and I'll try and see if I can, oh yeah, you can just barely see that right there. There is a crease in the helmet right there from a brick or something hit that and just smacked the daylights out of it. So just gives you an idea, if you've ever encountered a steel, World War II era steel helmet like this, and these really are just, that's all they are. I've got one of my great uncles helmets like this at home. Of course, those just olive drab green, but these are something else. If you want to crease that, you've got to hit it hard. So that's 2 helmets that we have. They show 2 different styles of helmets from that event. Also, one of the really neat pieces that we have in our collection, that this is like a one of one. I don't know, I've not come across anyone who has one of these. This is the vest that was worn by Al Butler at Ole Miss. And so you've got right here on the back, U.S. Marshals stenciled in. on the front, you have a number of different pouches, primarily for different types of grenades. So you've got the longer tear gas grenades and things like that. And then there's a little ring right here for a nightstick. So you've got that. And one of the reasons why I really want to stress the use of tear gas guns and the tear gas grenades is that the marshals, over the course of that night, as much tear gas as they shot, they were all armed. They all were carrying their service revolvers. They did not have to fire their service revolvers at all. And that was just a lot of restraint on their part that evening. One of the things that is really special, though, from that evening is this piece right here. This is the Deputy U.S. Marshal armband that was worn by Al Butler at Ole Miss. And so we've got a number of different things. Al Butler gave to the museum. We have one of, actually two of his gas masks. We have one that he gave to us, and then one a couple of years ago, his son gave us another gas mask. One of those gas masks was the one that was worn at Ole Miss. The other one was the gas mask he would have worn at the defense of the Pentagon. So there's, and if there's anybody who is on right now who has, who was a deputy at any of these events, I would love to feel free to pop up and be recognized. But there's a whole bunch of names that are on that list from that time frame who are people who went on to leadership positions within the agency. So I've got, those are all physical objects that we are looking at. Well, these are others are physical objects also, but now we're kind of into the archival parts. For the archival materials, I mentioned Gene Same earlier. Gene Same, a few years back, he gave us a number of collections. I'm going to go ahead and take my gloves off for these because if you remember my gloves off edition, I, like a lot of other people who work with archives, if your hands are clean, like freshly clean, I washed them just before I came on today, it's better in many cases to handle paper projects, paper materials with clean hands, just simply because one, it's a little bit more positive contact, but two, you don't have to worry about the cotton material snagging something or tearing fragile paper materials. So I'm going to switch over here to my other camera, and I'm going to show you some materials from Gene Same. I can't show you all the stuff that we have. We have files that he produced for us from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, retirement papers, personnel actions. You don't need to see his annual medical exams or his payroll changes, performance ratings, his resume, training, and then there was a whole file on the 40th anniversary of the events at Ole Miss. He has a whole file on the symposium. There was a 40th anniversary symposium which took place. University of Mississippi has some really good resources on that. So here's some information. Here's some of the stuff. This right here on the bottom is his identification card, basically saying that he is a Deputy United States Marshal. This is a signature card for certifying officer. Just basically says that this is his signature card. That if he signs that he is who he says he is. So there's a couple of other pieces in there. One piece, this is out of his 1970s folder, and most of it is pretty, for a lot of people, would be kind of boring. It's like memorandums from Wayne Colburn, who's the director, to who the U.S. Marshal in Indianapolis, and they would talk about different personnel things. But I really like this particular document. This is one of those things, we get questions every so often about how, well, I have this badge I came across, it's got a number, can you tell me who owned the badge? No, that's the short answer. The long answer is there are no public lists of badge numbers assigned to anybody. And really, honestly, before about the 1940s and 50s, there was no central issuing organization of badges. All the badges would be different depending on the district, and even within districts, there might be differences from one year to another. So in this particular case, this was in 1970. This is a piece of paper that Graham Same, Chief Deputy, Southern District of Indiana, hereby acknowledges receipt of U.S. Marshals Service badge number 282. This is understood and agreed that this badge will be exhibited in connection with official business only, and that it will be surrendered to the director immediately upon request or upon separation from the service. And so he ended up signing his name to that. And so this is a record that if you ever come across badge 282 of the style that was handed out in 1970, and I think this is the, what is it that they call those? What's her name that got caught up with the Symbionese Liberation Army? Patty Hearst. I think it was the Patty Hearst badge was still what was being used around 70. I think they used that one in, or did they not start using that one until later? I can't remember. I know the transition occurred right about that time frame. So if you get hold of badge number 282 of the style from that time frame, that would have been Gene Same's badge. Other than that, modern badges are listed, but it's privately held at the Marshals Service. They're not going to release that list of badges. And then you have training certifications, other memorandums. This is the kind of stuff that goes along inside different elements of what they dealt with as deputies. And really, honestly, as a historian, the most exciting parts of any file like this are what a lot of people would be considering boring. They are the, I see Scott Sanders verified it was the Patty Hearst badge. I'm assuming that's what you're verifying. But most of the documents that you come across, they're going to be very boring to most people. They don't care. But the thing is, for a historian, we look at some of these memorandums and we are able to say, oh, if Gene was here at this class, we also know that this John Smith was at the same class, or Steve Jones was at the same class, and we know that these guys encountered each other, and so we can start to make connections. We can start to make understandings that if this person was here and that person was there, what else were they involved in? And so we can start to help better understand the story, and we can help better relate that story to the folks who are out there. So this right here, though, is going to be the really exciting folder for, I think, most of you. This is Gene Same's badge on Ole Miss. And this right here, the first thing that I have in this file, it's from the White House, dated December 6th, 1962. That's signed by President John Kennedy. It was hand-signed. This isn't signed by the, there's like a little, what are they called? I can't remember the name of it. There's a device that a lot of organizations this big, especially for the president, they'll have it sign things automatically. Auto pen, that's what it was. So this is not that. This is him hand signing a thank you note for going to Oxford, Mississippi and doing that job. Next page is Office of the Attorney General, Washington, D.C., August 7th, 1961. This is regarding Montgomery, Alabama. This predates that. This is Gene Same having to go down to Montgomery, Alabama in 1961 during those riots. Signed by Bobby Kennedy. Here's a statement by Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, 1962, where this is his public statement regarding what happened at Oxford. Deputy Marshal Graham E. Same was critically wounded, and a number of other deputies were wounded and injured. Border Patrolman Charles B. Chambly made repeated trips for tear gas supplies through the mob. Men like Deputy Marshal Same, Patrolman Chambly, Chief Marshal James McShane, and John W. Cameron, his assistant, acted in the finest tradition of the Federal Service. And then there's others that they go through and mention. But just knowing that this is their, this is a typewritten account of Gene Same's recollections of what happened that night. There's the handwritten copy is farther in here, but this is typed out where this is his story of what happened. where he's talking about boarding the buses, went to the airport. There he boarded the Border Patrol planes and took off, landed at the Oxford, Mississippi airport in approximately 30 to 40 minutes. And so he keeps kind of going down here, telling about what's going on. Talks about when they arrived, they'd been there about 20 minutes when the Assistant Attorney General flew in, met by Mr. McShane and other members of the Marshal's office. They went into the administration building, were in there for about 10 minutes. They came back and we boarded the trucks. By that time, the parking lot behind the administration building was practically full. The road was lined with cars. People were milling around waving Confederate flags. And so they keep on going down, talking about no incidents en route to the campus, took positions around the Lyceum building. What time it was, I don't know. We were jeered, cussed, etc. by the students and other people who were milling around, walking around back and forth in front of us. State police were there. They were standing around in groups talking, not doing much of anything, just watching. There were special deputies, at least I assume that's what they were. They had little badges on. They were in groups, milling around and talking with the students and other people. Crowd began to assemble and get larger. Stationed on a corner, right corner of the Lyceum building facing the park, just about dusk. One time the command for gas was given. People scattered. Order was given to secure from gas. They did. In 5 minutes, rocks and debris were flying thick and heavy, breaking out window glass in the Border Patrol cars that were parked along the street. They got the command for gas. They donned their gas masks. The group directly in front of the building threw grenades and fired their gas guns. People started to disperse, throwing stones, Coke bottles, and what have you. The state police and their special deputies, along with the photographers, came around to our side where we were positioned, told them to get back. They answered that they'd been told to come up behind us out of the line of fire. We told them to stay on the other side of the street. We did not fire our gas guns. Stones were being thrown. Students and other people began to come up and mingle with the troopers and photographers. They began to throw things, so we fired our gas guns and dispersed all of them. Pace picked up. They're talking about just getting more and more. Getting dark. Crowd was pretty well dispersed out of the park. Street lights were on. They began to come out in mobs again, throwing everything. Everybody was wanting to know where more gas was. I had a 1.5 gas gun. That's what the gas guns in question here are. 1.5 being an 1.5 inch diameter barrel. Let me get back to this. Here we are. Pretty well cleared off where we began. No point in wasting it. They started coming across the park again. Gas was short, so I went down to the corner of the park with some fellows from our squad. Couldn't tell who they were. It was dark and they wore masks. I fired a burst into a group that was coming toward us. Something hit me in the neck. It sounded like a big splat. That's the last thing I remember clearly. I came to 3 or 4 times afterwards. I don't know where I was the first time. I could hear someone saying, quote, "It's too fast, slow down." Quote, "I haven't got any pulse, can't find a pulse." Quote, "Watch out so he doesn't swallow his tongue." Quote, "Do it by numbers. There, you've got it." The next thing I remember, I don't know what I was in, whether it was an ambulance or what. I was in a vehicle of some kind. There was someone with me. He was talking to the driver. He said, quote, "Let's get out of here." Quote, "Get going, don't stop." Quote, "What's the matter?" Quote, "Let's go." The next thing I remember, he said, "What's the matter?" The driver answered, "I've missed the turn to the airport. I've got to turn around." And he said, "No, I haven't. Here it is." The next thing I remember, I was in an airplane. Someone said, "Breathe in." They had an oxygen mask. They were giving me oxygen. He was talking to someone. He said, "He's not going to make it. I can't find any pulse." Then I blacked out again. Later, I heard him say, "We're going to lose this boy. He's not going to make it." Then it seemed that he was throwing something in the airplane. I could hear something bouncing all over the plane. He was hollering for the pilot or co-pilot. He came back and said something about more speed and running out of oxygen. Quote, "He's had it. He's not going to make it." I was about gone. Someone touched my forehead. That's the last thing I remember there. Next thing I remember, we were on the ground, evidently. Someone said, "Is there a doctor with you?" The reply was yes. Then he said, "Get him out of here." The man in the plane said, "He can't be moved. Get the doctor in here." Evidently, it was the doctor who came into the plane. He said, "Let me see him." Then it seems like he took my arm and put a needle into it. I blacked out again. The next thing I remember, I was in a hospital. I remember answering questions for the doctor, who my wife was, and the address. I remember telling him what my blood type was. I remember the doctor telling me that when I woke up, I would have a tube in my throat and not to worry about it. That's just about all I can remember. And that was Gene Sames. That was Gene Sames' recollection of that night after he was shot. So, I mean, it's just one of those things that, as a historian, seeing that firsthand written by somebody really brings to life much more than, for example, reading snippets and pieces out of a Wikipedia article like I was doing earlier. So let's get back to other documents that he has in that file that helps tell this story. Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, November 2nd, 62. Appreciated very much your good letter of October 22nd. Very grateful for your courage, not less so for your fine recovery. Considerate of you to write back as was done. I wish you have all success on the job in the near future. My appreciation and compliments to you. And that's Bobby Kennedy. This is a picture of Gene Same with Bobby Kennedy. Memorandum. Oh, this is answers that he did to this is to Andrew Phelan, who was the Criminal Division, Department of Justice. Andrew Phelan, if I remember right, was Assistant Attorney General. And he's talking about questions that he had related to what, to the best of your recollection, what time did you sustain your injury? What were you doing? Please indicate where you were injured. Short statement as to how you were injured. If hospitalized, indicate where. Newspaper headline from the Indianapolis Times. And so, and this headline, 2 dead, 75 injured. And of the 2 dead, both of them were people who are not involved with law enforcement, and as far as people can tell, they were killed by the mob. French journalist and another, I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a report from Charlie Luce regarding Gene and his injury. Statement by, again, a copy of the statement by the Attorney General. More typewritten notes. Jim McShane, memo from Jesse Jordan, Deputy U.S. Marshal, Southern District of Indiana, to James McShane, Chief U.S. Marshal. And at the time, the Chief U.S. Marshal was the person in charge of the Marshals Service, well, what was then starting to become the Marshals Service. This is a thank you letter, copy of a thank you letter from Gene Same to Bobby Kennedy in October of that year. Superior's report of injury, more injury reports. This is Chief of Staff from a hospital certifying that he was treated as an outpatient. And then so you kind of get on to some more documents like that. And it really, there you go, deputy shot at Ole Miss, received an honor as a result of that. Federal Bar Association, citation for meritorious service. So we have a number of different things, and this is John F. Kennedy. We're deeply touched by your thoughtfulness in letting us know that you share in our sorrow. We are consoled by the knowledge that the love he gave is returned in full measure. Robert and Ethel Kennedy. And this is from Bobby Kennedy, thanking him for a condolence letter, I'm assuming, sent after the death of John F. Kennedy. Because remember, this is all happening in the months leading up to November of 1962. And so you have a lot of stuff, really just kind of just some crazy things going on during that fall. And then just, I'm going to leave you some last materials that we have from Gene. Just a news clipping file that he had talking about some of his job. No horse either. U.S. Marshal's job might bore Matt Dillon. Gene Same, Clarksville, takes criminals to prison, serves subpoenas and warrants. And so it's one of those things that just learning more and more about the job and getting a chance to see news articles talking about everything that happened. Indianapolis Star article about Ole Miss and him, Gene Same. So there's just a lot of neat things that we get to see in our job here, learning about the Marshals Service, learning about the history of our country, and just really, honestly, it's one of those things that every day we get to see new light on what the Marshals Service is doing, not just in the news every day, but here in the collection, we get to look more and more at what is available to us in the archives and other collections around the country, and our physical collections, and how we're better going to be able to tell that story. So I know there haven't been a lot of questions today. Thank you, though. I definitely want to thank the people who have popped in. Before I go, I want to also show off something new that we have added. We've put this in our museum store. You can now go out and get yourself a United States Marshals Museum face mask. We are selling these. We announced this a couple of days ago on Facebook and on Instagram, and we immediately sold out. We have an order in right now for more of them. You can, if you're interested in this, these are selling for $10. They're selling through the Outpost on our museum store, and we'll share the link here in a bit. But the masks themselves, one size fits most, like most of the masks you'll come across. The $10, and then you have to pay shipping and handling, I believe. The masks themselves, they are made locally here, like we're getting produced locally here in Fort Smith. So if you are here in Fort Smith, by all means, holler at us, and you might even be able to come by and pick it up personally rather than having us drop it in the mail to you. So you can holler at us if that's the case. But if you want to help support the museum, this is a small way to, out of every one of these masks, a couple bucks will end up coming back to us. But every little bit helps. Again, we've got other ways to help us. That's $10 if you want to look at the Buy a Brick campaign. You can go to our webpage. Casey dropped a link earlier for that. We're more than happy to talk to anybody who wants to help us out as we continue to move forwards. If you are of the sort who'd like to help match that $100,000 that we're still trying to finish off to get the total of the $500,000 match, we can direct you to the right folks who are here at the museum. We are very definitely still here. We're continuing to move towards the future and continuing to move towards having our having the museum set up so we can tell you these stories in person. We cannot wait to have people come in and share this building with you. We are looking forward to that time when it happens. And all we can do is thank those of you who want to come by and show us the support here through the show. You can go, like I said, you can go onto our webpage through to the Outpost, our museum store, and pick up one of those. You can just help us out other ways. This ended up being a much longer episode than I was expecting, but I'm very happy to be able to get this one out there. It's a very important story, not only to our nation, but to the Marshals Service, or vice versa. There's a lot of lessons we can take from this, and a lot of things that we can learn as we continue to move forwards as a country. And we just really love, as our museum, as I was telling somebody this earlier today, we are not the Marshals Service, but we have that great responsibility and that great pleasure to be able to tell the story of the Marshals Service. Whether it is being able to show off the objects in our collection and talk about the history through these first-person accounts, or going to the Hall of Honor and being able to talk about those people who gave their all. We're fortunate that Gene Same didn't end up on the wall in the Hall of Honor. The event that evening could have gone a completely different direction. Thank you very much for popping in. Thank you very much for taking part in the conversation. That was neat hearing from Sharon about the fact that she grew up there, that she kind of remembers what was going on. We have there's just so many stories that we want to tell and we want to continue to tell, and we can only continue to tell them if you are there to help us out. And so by all means, please feel free to drop us a line. If there is a subject that you want to hear about, something that you feel we haven't talked about enough, or there's a couple of different things that we have in our head that we're going to talk about here in the future. But I know a couple of these things we need to get a little bit more background information before we can come out with them. But we are looking at some different things in the future. If you are interested, if you have the name of somebody and you want to find out, was that person at Ole Miss, was that person not at Ole Miss, I actually have a list of, based off of official Marshals Service files, of who served at Ole Miss, and of those 127, which names are on there, and which ones were able to do that. One of the names that jumps out at me right now, Kenneth Muir. For those who don't know, Kenneth Muir was Deputy U.S. Marshal who was killed in Medina, North Dakota by Gordon Call in 83. Was that 81 or 83? I am so sorry. It's 81 or 83, and just those numbers I cannot remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was 83. But Kenneth Muir was there that evening. He is on the Wall of Honor. There are other names here here's Robert Powell, who wore that helmet that I was just talking about. There's Charlie Combs. I know I've seen his name before in a lot of different things. There's a lot of very important people who were at all of these different events, and there's some amazing stories that they have to tell. So if there's anything that you can think of that will help us out, if there's a way that we can help you guys out, please feel free to holler. If there's somebody you think, I know every once in a while I interview people here. If there's someone you think we should interview in an upcoming episode, by all means, send us those suggestions. You can get us through Facebook or Instagram. You can holler at us on Twitter, or you can email me, dkennedy@usmmuseum.org, and we're more than happy to take any suggestions you guys have. Other than that, thank you very much. Stay safe this Labor Day weekend. This is a long 3-day weekend. Hopefully Labor Day does not decide to do what St. Patrick's Day did and turn into a 5-month holiday. We are looking into just, again, try to stay safe, wear your mask. Even if it's not mandatory where you live, please wear your mask. It's one of those things that can help everybody out. We're not just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for everybody else around us. Think of those federal employees who are out in the line of duty right now. I know there are CSOs and deputies every day who are putting their lives on the line, not just going out and trying to get the body on fugitives, but there are also folks who are putting their life on the line every day, just working courthouse security. CSOs, task force officers, deputies, special deputies, all up and down the line. So think about them for a little bit this weekend. Make sure you stay safe. Do what you can to help others. Thank you very much. And again, you can get these on our webpage at the Outpost. You can get hold of the bricks through our webpage. We're going to be sharing more links about our educational programs, Constitution Week readings, National History Day, lots of great stuff going on. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully next time it's not going to last an hour long. So I will talk to you all later. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Friday.